Hello, and welcome to the Steadfast Podcast, where we talk about emotional wellness, therapy, and creating secure, resilient lives. I'm Tiff Holgate, therapist at Steadfast, trained in EMDR, and certified in brain spotting. And I'm so glad you're joining me today. As the holidays approach, many of us look forward to the joy and togetherness this season promises. But for many, this time of year can be incredibly stressful and emotionally challenging. The holiday season, it has a way of magnifying family dynamics, old wounds, and unresolved trauma. Today, we're going to dive into how to emotionally navigate the holidays, especially if you've experienced trauma or find yourself getting triggered by family interactions. We'll talk about how to recognize your trauma responses, how to set and hold boundaries, and we'll explore how to keep your plate from overflowing this holiday season. Before we dive in, let's remember to breathe our way through this triggering and sometimes annoying topic. Let's start with a bit of psychoeducation. Trauma responses, especially during stressful times like the holidays, look different for each person. For some, being around certain family members can bring up old feelings of shame, fear, or anger. You might notice yourself becoming defensive, or maybe you shut down completely when conversations get tough. These are natural responses that your body has learned over time to protect you. The holidays can be a time when these responses are heightened, and it's important to recognize that these reactions don't just happen out of nowhere. They are often linked to past experiences that left an emotional mark. Trauma responses like fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn, which is people-pleasing, are ways your body tries to keep you safe. It's helpful to acknowledge when you're feeling triggered. When you're sitting at the holiday table and suddenly feel your heart rate increasing, or like a sense of dread creeping in, or an intense desire to run and hide, that's your body signaling that it's remembering something painful. You may not always understand the connection in the moment, but those emotional responses are real, and they deserve your attention. The key is to respond with curiosity rather than judgment. You can ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Or what's happening right now that's making me uncomfortable? Am I safe? Recognizing these signs early can help you manage them before they escalate. Now, when we talk about managing trauma responses during the holidays, one of the most powerful tools we have is boundary setting. I cannot stress enough how important it is to know what boundaries are and how to implement them. So, what are boundaries? A boundary is a limit you set for yourself to protect your emotional, mental, or physical well-being. It's about deciding what you are willing to accept and what you're not. Imagine your emotional capacity as a plate at a holiday feast. You only have so much space. And if you let too much get piled onto it, everything starts to spill over. And if you try to eat it all, you get sick. Remember, you have choices. You choose what you put on your plate, and you choose what you don't put on your plate. Don't pass your plate around the table and have others fill it for you without asking you first. We've all had that family member who wants you to try their stuffing or sauce. It's okay to say no. It's okay to have space on your plate. I know some of you don't like your food to touch the other food on your plate. The holidays often come with added pressure, family expectations, social obligations, and the need to make everything perfect. We tend to say yes to things we don't really want to do because we feel like we should, or our mother said we should. But overloading yourself by agreeing to everything leaves no room for peace or enjoyment. When you overfill your plate, something has to come off, or you risk burning out or exploding. The first step in setting boundaries is knowing your limits. Take some time to reflect on what your emotional capacity is during this time of year. You can ask yourself, how many events can I attend without feeling drained? Or how much time can I spend with family before I start to feel overwhelmed? Recognizing these limits will help guide you in setting boundaries. Once you know your limits, the next step is to communicate them clearly. And here's where things can get tricky. Family dynamics are complex, and sometimes we fear that setting boundaries will lead to conflict. And honestly, there might be kickback from family members when you set up and hold to boundaries. But boundaries aren't about shutting people out or rejecting them. They're about creating space for your well-being. It's important to remember that saying no to someone else is often saying yes to yourself, and that's okay. And the holidays are about relationships. You're half of that equation. So when you can set limits for yourself, you're more able to be present in the relationships you choose to engage in. Let's say you've been invited to 3 different holiday gatherings, but you know that attending all 3 will leave you feeling exhausted. Instead of saying yes to everything and then feeling resentful or overwhelmed later, you can say something like, I'd love to come, but I'm going to pass on this one. Or if a certain family member tends to trigger you with their comments, you might say, I'm not comfortable talking about that right now. When you state your boundaries in a calm and respectful way, it becomes easier for others to respect them. And if they don't, well, that's more about their issue than yours. You are responsible for protecting your own emotional health. Remember, you have choices. I want to take a moment to focus on a really important aspect of boundary setting. Internal boundaries. These are the limits we set with ourselves. For example, if you know you tend to overextend yourself by people pleasing or trying to make everyone happy, setting an internal boundary might look like saying, I'm only going to commit to one event this weekend, or I won't stay longer than 2 hours at the family gathering. It's about managing your own expectations and giving yourself permission to step back when needed. It's choosing what to put on your plate. A great way to support these internal boundaries is to tune into your own body. Our bodies often give us signals when we're overextending ourselves or when we're feeling emotionally flooded. You might notice tension in your shoulders, a racing heart, or a knot in your stomach. These are signs that your body is asking for a break. And it's okay to listen to that. It's okay to say, my plate is full. I'm not taking any more on right now. Let's talk about what it means to hold boundaries. Setting a boundary is one thing, but holding it can be much harder. Sometimes people will push back, or you might feel guilty for not meeting their expectations. This is completely normal. Sometimes when there hasn't been a boundary, people get used to not having it there. They sometimes need time to adjust to a new boundary. When holding a boundary, it's essential to remind yourself that boundaries are acts of self-care, not selfishness. If you've communicated that you need some space and someone tries to guilt you into changing your mind, it's okay to repeat your boundary. You could say, I understand this is important to you, but I still need to stick with my decision. Holding firm doesn't mean you're being unkind. It means you're honoring your needs. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a few practical takeaways for navigating the holiday season, and I'm going to use the word plate to help us remember. Pace. Go at your own pace. Maybe you have some unresolved childhood trauma and aren't sure how to set up boundaries yet. That is okay. Just being aware that you want to set up these boundaries is the first step. Because remember, you have choices now. You can choose what to put on your plate. Listen. Listen to the signs your body is giving you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or triggered, that's a sign to slow down and check in with yourself. Allow. Allow time for healing to happen. It doesn't happen overnight. Maybe your family has some dysfunctional patterns, all of ours do, and maybe there's abuse and trauma that's been unresolved or kept secret. Family holidays may not be the best time to bring it past. Trust yourself. When you are holding your boundaries, trust yourself. Trust that the boundaries you put in place are for your own benefit and the benefit of others. Boundaries are about self-care, and holding them is an act of love for yourself. Expectations. Consider adjusting your expectations for the holidays to give yourself more space to just breathe. Step back and look for maybe just one thing you can change or adjust during the holidays to give yourself some space and time to breathe. By the time New Year's comes around, sometimes we're so stressed, like we're just ready to make resolutions for change. So let's do that now as we go into the holidays and not wait. Because I am a trauma therapist, I want to take a minute to discuss those situations where there has been abuse within the family network. It is 100% okay to choose to not spend the holidays with someone who has abused you. This is an opportunity for you to put up a strong boundary and hold to it. On a practical note, if you are working through abuses from your childhood and someone involved in that is part of your family or someone you might see at a holiday event, you might be ready to confront or bring these secrets to light. Let me encourage you to not do this at a family function or holiday event. There will be a time for healing that wound, so take this time to set up boundaries and hold them, and trust there will be an appropriate time in the future to address those wounds. Sometimes, at holiday events, there is alcohol. Alcohol, when used in moderation, can be a way to socialize and bond with family and friends. I know we all like the apple cider, or we like the eggnog that someone has spiked. But when we use it to manage or cope with our triggers, our anxiety, our stress, it can exacerbate it. If you're going into this season with some hurt, consider limiting your alcohol use. I hope these tips give you a framework for approaching the holidays with more peace, more awareness, and more room to genuinely enjoy the season. Thank you for joining me today on the Steadfast Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about trauma therapy, EMDR, or brain spotting, or if you need support during the holiday season, visit our website or reach out to us at Steadfast Christian Counseling. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who might need it. Wishing you all a healthy, peaceful, and boundary-filled holiday season.